you could offer some opening remarks as well.
Well, first of all, thanks, David. You know, I know that we might run the risk of having this be a thank you fest, but this really is important for us to thank everybody who's joined. First of all, I want to thank you, Greg, and you, David, for not only having me part of the team, but also Mikhail and Robert for their participation tonight. And that brings me to the rest of you who are actually watching tonight and who will be watching this video as it moves forward. Your participation is a testament to your commitment to the nation. And, you know, that is honorable, and we want to honor that. And we also want to let you know that our commitment to you is to try and provide you the best, most up-to-date, clearest information possible. And we're going to do everything that we can to separate things like our opinions versus fact versus beliefs. And so tonight, in the short time that we have together, we have a lot of material to cover, and we're going to do the best job that we can at that. Like I said, we have a lot of material to cover in a very short amount of time. So what I'm going to do is go through some of the basics as to how this format is going to look, and then I'm going to give it over to Mikhail, who will introduce our guest. Give or take about 90 minutes or so. We're going to try and wrap this up. You know, in about 90 minutes or so. Hopefully we're going to come in under that. Now, technically, this is an unofficial event because, you know, what we can't do is really outline policy. There's a lot going on. It's happening very fast, and the situation is changing very rapidly. And so what we're going to try and do, and what Robert is going to try and do, is give us a pretty good outlook of what is happening. And so for the purposes of this event, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're not going to do and what we are going to do. What we're not going to do is go too far into the history of the war, or maybe some of the lead up and the potentials. There will be some of that in here for sure. But we're not going to do a deep dive into the current events with the Armenian government, because there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of different places to get that information. And we're not going to really get into party politics, because that is probably not the best use of Robert's time. And for the purposes of this event, what we are going to do is really get into current events and how we as a diaspora can be most effective moving forward. So that said, what I want to do is introduce Mikhail. And what we're going to do with him is he's going to introduce Robert, and kind of what's going to happen with the rest of the night is Robert's going to give some basic idea of what's going on. He's going to have some prepared moments. And some discussion. Then we're going to get into the panel discussion. We have a handful of questions, or we have a handful of different categories of questions that have been laid out to encompass most of the questions that the community has. And then we've actually included many of the questions that the community has put forth. And then anything left over from that will go into an open Q&A section. So we're going to do everything that we can to get you the best information as rapidly as possible. And don't worry, at the end of this, we're going to give you some additional links and other opportunities to interface with us at Arach Media, so you'll have everything that you need moving forward. So that said, I want to introduce Mikhail Avetisyan, who is a Bay Area native, originally from Baku. He's a longtime advocate and a dear friend of both Greg and David, and now myself, and of course Arach Media in general. And so he's going to be introducing our premier guest. Go ahead.
Thank you, Richard. So, I want to thank all of the participants in this town hall meeting. It's needless to say that the events of the past 45 days are of utmost importance for not only Artsakh and Armenia, but our nation as a whole. And despite the fact that they've been extremely difficult and extremely physically and emotionally draining on our whole nation, and it led to the results that we are seeing now on the ground, and I will go into some of the details in a moment, I want to stress very, very strongly that not all is lost by far. There is plenty that has been preserved, and there's plenty that we need to work towards as far as creating a situation and helping to create the situation on the ground in Artsakh where our population feels significantly protected and feels like there's focus from the community, the worldwide Armenian community, and beyond the Armenians, as a matter of fact, in terms of creating and helping them not only bring the relative well-being back, but to even hopefully and potentially improve upon the situation beyond where Artsakh was just about a month and a half ago. So I wanted to take a moment before I dive into some of the details for just a couple of minutes of what's going on in Artsakh at the moment. I wanted to read out a short extract of an article written by one of the main propagandists of Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, who was one of the very few Facebook personalities whose account was not shut down because he kept spewing both the updates from the front lines and the official propaganda coming from Aliyev. And the significance of this extract or the readout is directed to you guys, the Armenian diaspora. So please listen carefully. I'm going to read it relatively quickly. So here's the extract from the official Azeri propaganda. Immediately after the agreement was made public in Baku, a part of the expert community asked a natural question: what stopped Azerbaijan from conducting a final offensive on Stepanakert and deoccupying the last regions of the mountainous part of Karabakh? Ilham Aliyev and Azerbaijan are opposed not only by a weak and broken Armenia, but by the huge Armenian diaspora with unlimited leverage over the world political elites. Ilham Aliyev is fighting the powerful world Armenians. Remember the tone of statements by world leaders, the newly minted American President Joe Biden, French President Macron, and the leaders of the European Union, who openly declared the danger of ethnocide and deportation of civilians. Of course, Azerbaijan has not fought and is not at war with the civilian population, right? But go and prove your truth in the world of capitals. Western capitals increasingly began to hint to Aliyev about the inevitable outcome of the confrontation, the Kosovo scenario. Needless to say, if already former President Trump has shamelessly and openly voiced this parallel, and Biden and the Democratic Party traditionally openly expressed their pro-Armenian sympathies. The Azerbaijani army stopped just at the gates of cities and regions where the Armenian population compactly lives. The civilian population began to hastily leave the areas, and the danger of threats to become accused of carrying out ethnic cleansing looms over Azerbaijan. It's not so difficult to predict how these political accusations would turn out for Azerbaijan in legal terms. By and large, official Baku has never met with the understanding and sympathy anywhere, excluding the sincere and all-round support from two states, Turkey and Pakistan. So this gives you an idea of how significant it is, the various efforts that we as a diaspora engage in, the grassroots efforts, the efforts at the higher levels directly with the representatives of the US and other Western governments. They do pay attention, they are afraid of it, they assess properly that our diaspora is extremely influential and it has amazing potential. We have not realized that in full. We do need to realize that potential. The situation in Artsakh, specifically on the ground at the moment, is still quite uncertain and quite tense. And Robert will speak a little more to that. So, but in reality, what has happened? So we obviously have lost some territories through combat, including the southern flank of the territories, about 3 regions, actually 4 regions, Zangilan, Kubatli, Jabrail, and Fizuli, that were occupied by our forces or liberated by our forces almost 30 years ago and were kept as a buffer security zone. They were not populated or very thinly populated. So, but that wasn't it. We also lost some native Armenian regions which retained their Armenian population since antiquity without interruption. Most significantly, the region of Hadrut with 13,000 in population. That's the southernmost region of Artsakh, where there are a lot of important Armenian sites, including some very significant medieval cathedrals. We lost half of the district of Shushi, including, of course, the biggest prize of this war for the Azeris, the city of Shushi itself. And we did lose small chunks of the Askeran and Martuni regions, the southern flanks of those regions that were adjacent to the Hadrut region that is gone. So the total population in those areas was about 24,000 people who are not only displaced, they're displaced permanently unless we're able to make a push somehow. I hope it happens, where the diaspora pushes the Western capitals and perhaps Russia to demand that ethnic cleansing from those areas is reversed, and Armenians are able to return those areas and are able to return into those areas. Doesn't seem very realistic right now at this point, but perhaps we have such chances. So we also have areas in the north, little chunks of the Martaket region were also lost in combat, but they're pretty a small area. So on top of it, we have 3 districts, Shaomian district, or also known as Karavachar, the Kashatagh district. Those are very large 2 districts that are located between Artsakh and Armenia, on the western flanks of Artsakh. And of course, on the eastern side, the region of Aghdam. So those 3 regions prior to the previous war of the 1990s were populated mostly by the Azeris and the Kurds. So, and we did have our settlers in those areas, especially on the west side, and that's about 15,000 people. So now those are the people who are getting displaced right now as we speak at the moment. They are emptying those lands with the expectation that the Azeris will be moving in relatively quickly over the next 15, 20 days. And they are the ones who are burning their own homes as a result. And that's another 15,000 displaced people basically permanently. I mean, so that on top of the 40,000 people we spoke about who have been displaced, there's at least 20 or 30,000 people who have lost homes because of the destruction through bombing and firing within the areas that we protected, we were able to protect and keep. So especially in Stepanakert. So there is a lot of rebuilding to do for those folks. But if you look at the area of Soviet Artsakh, so we so far have retained probably around 70% of that area. And that's where the majority of the efforts will be expended to provide security guarantees for the population and also to bring back to life economic activity in that area. And even the Russian forces that have come in to protect those areas from the Azeri aggression have started putting some efforts into it. Now, with all of this, so that's the situation on the ground. I will turn now to Robert Avetisyan. He's the permanent representative of Artsakh in Washington, and he has been in that position for a great many years. So, and he will address some of these questions that we know are up in the air and on everybody's minds. And then he will be open to more questioning from you guys. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to welcome you, the organizers, and everyone who is with us, not only today, now as we speak, but also has been with us throughout this very challenging period of the history of Artsakh. Indeed, if we look at the history of the Republic of Artsakh, for every Artsakh, there was something behind November 10 and the life of Artsakh after November 10, right? I know for the sake of time, we are not trying to get too much into the background, but there are certain important things that should be mentioned. On September 27, we have seen this all-in aggression by Azerbaijan and Turkey. But this conflict has, well, this is not the first instance of aggression, of course, against Artsakh, but this time it was unprecedented in various things, in various aspects. One is the hands-on and all-in participation of Turkey, the participation of the international terrorists, of course, which have been hired and transported from northern Syria and Libya by Turkey to the conflict zone, and also the scope and scale of the armament which has been used. I mean, the region hasn't seen that active and that intensive fighting for many, many decades. We all know how this resulted. I don't want to say that it ended, but the result, as we've seen it on November 10th, is of course not what every Armenian hoped. But I want to assure you that the plan was to finish the deal on whatever they have in mind. Many of you probably know that Erdogan was saying that Turkey is going to finish the mission, complete the mission of their forefathers in the South Caucasus, and Armenians know what it means. They couldn't implement their agenda, which was to occupy all of Artsakh in 3 or 4 days and reach out the Armenian border, Armenia proper. And the heroism and the self-sacrifice of so many of our brothers and sisters defended Artsakh and defended our choice for at least 43 days. But I want to just to mention a couple of things. Many of you probably heard also the statement by the president of Artsakh, and one of the main messages he delivered was that this is not the end, this is just the beginning. Artsakh never gives up, and we have Republic of Artsakh. We have derailed or ruined the plans of Azerbaijan, which has been directly or indirectly supported by 7 other countries to fight against us. And we're resolute to continue building our lives as we chose it back in 1988. To be free, to be democratic, to have our own government, and to provide all the rights and liberties which are inherent for any democratic society. We felt the support by our compatriots around the world from the day one. Just like Greg mentioned, I was in Artsakh, and I could compare it with the situation when we were when we found ourselves during the aggression by Azerbaijan in the early 90s. And at this time, of course, we've seen a much more smoother conditions for the civilian population. We had electricity, we had running water, we have very functioning medical services. The state emergency service was doing everything they could to ease the burden of the population who found themselves in those challenging conditions. And there was nobody hungry in Artsakh. The state wasn't paralyzed. Also, that was the idea from the day one when Azerbaijan began to strike not only the defense army, but also the entire civilian infrastructure in Artsakh. So, and I want to really thank each and everyone who has been participating in all those efforts. We feel that support, and we remain convinced that we have to stick together, and we have to continue our efforts to make sure that what Azerbaijani and Turks and whoever supported them and supports, whatever they have in mind regarding Artsakh, we don't have the chance. We don't have to let the chance for that to occur. We have to prevent those criminal intentions. We have to prevent those genocidal intentions, and to survive and strengthen the Republic of Artsakh. Cherish whatever we have, and always be optimistic, and have in mind that we are not going anywhere. The Republic of Artsakh will continue to live, will continue to develop, and will continue to strengthen. And the rest will show, the history will show in the proper time. I know Misha talked about the territories. I want everyone to realize that what we know in Artsakh, and we felt it in Artsakh, that this has never been an issue of territories. Territories and refugees and all those issues are kind of consequence of Azerbaijan's aggression in 1991. In 1988, Azerbaijan was in possession, in control of all those territories, which they later claimed to be taken by Armenians, but still they chose to occupy Artsakh, to try to occupy Artsakh. By 1992, there was a situation which probably was worse than Artsakh is in now in terms of geographic control and control of territory by Azerbaijanis and Armenians. And they still didn't choose to stop. They wanted to finish the deal and kill every Armenian and destroy anything Armenian in Artsakh. So this is not about really territories. This is about our freedom versus their dictatorship. This is our democracy versus attempts to suppress that democracy. And that is also one of the reasons why we expect the international community to remain proactive, remain active, if not proactive, be more active, of course, because from now on, this is not a conflict between Artsakh and Azerbaijan. This is a war of our civilization, which is shared by the rest of the world, versus international terrorism, which is in Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan and Turkey have pretty much became countries which support terrorism and use them as proxies for reaching their political goals. We have to stick together. I understand it is very painful. It's hard to imagine the pain which is in the hearts and souls and minds of every Artsakh and everyone who has been in Artsakh and who loves Artsakh. But they want us to give up. They want us to stay away from Artsakh. They want us to stop our efforts. And they, of course, I mean the enemy. And we have to prove that they cannot affect our course of actions. They cannot affect our determination to continue standing by our homeland, just like we have been doing for the past 30 years. And hopefully that together we will once again restore the whole glory of Artsakh with all its beauty and even much stronger security. Thank you, gentlemen. Probably this is what I would like to share as an introductory word, and I suggest that we go to the questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate your time, and very happy that you can give us this time and explain some of the items that the community is curious about. Now, the questioning is divided into various categories. My category that I will start with is the status, the land status of Artsakh as it stands currently, right? What can you tell us about the status on the ground of the key areas of Artsakh at the moment, particularly spotlighting, obviously, you know, how is everything in the capital of Stepanakert? What is going on with Hadrut and possibly in the future? And what is the status of Shushi as we understand it? And lastly, we know this, the peacekeepers, the Russian peacekeepers are coming into the area. They are already on the ground. What, if anything, you can tell about the level of the pro-Armenian support within the Russian peacekeeping forces? We've heard some positive outcomes there, the pushing back of some deadlines, the preservation of some monasteries. If you could just give the community a brief outline of these items.
Thank you. Well, I think that the part about the territories has already been covered by Misha. I just can confirm that, yes, Hadrut region, the city of Hadrut, and most of it is occupied by Azeri-Turkish forces, and terrorists are also on the ground. Shushi has been occupied by them. Stepanakert is Armenian. Stepanakert continues to be the capital of the Republic of Artsakh. Our administration is working from there, and as I said, life is not paralyzed. The question about the, well, I mean, if we talk about the crucial, which land is crucial, every piece of Artsakh is crucial. And the line of contact was where it was because that was the most convenient or the safest way. And we have to admit, and we have to know that the genocidal threats against us, they didn't start in 1988, they started in 1918, when the Turks again attacked Artsakh and massacred the Armenian population in Shushi. Also, there were attempts to de-Armenize the entire Artsakh, but kind of the Soviet Union, when it expanded to the South Caucasus, it postponed the deal or the possibility of that. But Turkey always had in mind the aggressive expansionism at the expense of the Armenian people. And it is not only the notion of Panturan and Panturkism, which is a kind of the emotional part of that. It is clear that the current day Turkey is trying to reach out to every source of energy in the region, be it the aggressive behavior in the Mediterranean or in the Middle East, and their intention to expand their influence on the Central Asia. And Azerbaijan has been pretty much swallowed by Turkey now. They implemented the command and control, air force, ground force, their special troops and their generals were fighting against us. This was not Azerbaijani forces versus Armenian forces. They wouldn't have withstand it. They wouldn't have been able to resist the might of the Armenian army, and moreover to force us into the conditions that we are in today. So the expansionism is there, and they've been cherishing this idea for many, many decades, or more than a century now. The threat is still there, and that's also another reason why we say that we have to keep mobilized, keep our resources mobilized, and soberly realize what is the policy of Turks and others. I mean, we have to also admit that, and we know it, and everybody knows it already for a fact, that they have gone as far, they're ready to go as far as to involve international terrorism in this. So this is the absolute priority for them, and they're going to try again if they see that Artsakh is weak, or the Armenians kind of are in doubt about their intentions on how to move forward in protecting Artsakh. Russian peacekeepers, yes, that is a force which, I mean, there were several attempts to cease the fire for humanitarian reasons and for a more broad, as a more broad statement on October 10, on October 17, and the 24th. But every time with all those three statements, Azerbaijani side resumed attacks pretty much few minutes after the documents were supposed to enter into force. This time it is much more serious. Azerbaijan, just like Misha said, they also have kind of hard feelings about all this. And also they indicate that they wanted to take all of Artsakh, not only the pre-Soviet kind of regions around the Soviet time, Nagorno-Karabakh autonomy. But we are glad that our army resisted for 43 days against those armades of, just like I said, 8 countries in general. And the Russian peacekeepers are enforcing peace now. I would say they're peacemakers. They are the component which helps us to preserve the stability. We hear no any escalation along the line of contact or in Stepanakert. And Stepanakert and all the settlements around Artsakh have been subject to missile strikes, very heavy missile strikes. The pro-Armenian support, honestly, I don't have the clear understanding why would you, or anyone from our readers, I understand that this is probably the issue which is of interest for our listeners, I'm sorry, not readers. But I don't see any pro-Armenian support, and I think there is a support support for peace. There is a support for preservation of cultural monuments. There's a support for security and make ready conditions against genocide or humanitarian crisis, and that is a prerogative of any country, especially if we consider that Russia is one of the 3 co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group. It is very much natural that one of the biggest players on the international political and military and economic arena is doing whatever they can to make sure that people don't undergo another genocide, that people don't stay threatened by the army, by this enemy who is trying to swallow the entire Artsakh with its Armenian population. So the support would be pro-peace, pro-stability, and against war. I think that's it.
Guys, if you don't mind, just quickly follow up on Robert, can you address those folks who are skeptics of the Russian involvement in the area and the skeptics of the Russian intentions?
Well, if the skeptics imply that everybody should be staying away and just waiting until the evil forces kill every Armenian and just like Erdogan said, finish the deal, I don't think that there should be any skeptics about Russia's involvement, because we have been inviting every country in the world, every democracy in the world, which is against genocide, which doesn't tolerate genocide as a tool for doing dealing political matters. As a countries, we've invited every country which have recognized and condemned the Armenian genocide in particular to step in and to exert their influence on Turkey and Azerbaijan, including by sanctions and the entire set of political and diplomatic measures that are available for political players. Unfortunately, we haven't seen, yes, we have seen some certain level of involvement by many democracies, but there was no any step strong enough to push Turkey and Azerbaijan to back down, to stop attacking Artsakhs and to stop their attempts of conquering everything by force.
Thank you so much, Robert, for addressing the status of Artsakh right now. We wanted to shift gears into the status of the displaced residents and people of Artsakh, the Armenian people of Artsakh. Do we have an accurate idea of the total numbers of displaced citizens now?
It was, no, we didn't have it, never. It was because during the war, the movement was back and forth pretty much every day. We can say that most of Artsakhi's have left from Artsakh and they found a temporary shelter in Armenia. We hold that temporary because we, just like you said in the introductory word, we need everyone to return to Artsakh, given that we will provide the proper level of security and infrastructure and everything will be back on track and working in order to supply all the basic needs of the population. And the physical security is, of course, the number one issue and has been always for Artsakhi's. We can say that most of them are out, but we're out. But now we see that the movement back from Armenia and from Yerevan and other cities and villages in Armenia. I think for the past 2 days, we already have more than 1,000 people who returned to Stepanakert. And this is not a bad number considering that the fighting is very fresh. And also we hear some cases that Azerbaijanis continue attacking Armenians wherever they can. I mean, doing little subversive attempts, not on the front line, but doing some nasty things in communities which are close to the front line. And that will take time to calm down completely. But we are, as a state and as a government, we're going to do whatever we can to create the necessary conditions for our compatriots to return because we need them in Artsakh. We need them, and just like the president said, Artsakh is their home, and they can return. And every displaced person, for instance, the Adrutsis, who are yet to be able to return to Hadrut, they will be given the residences or dwelling in Stepanakert and other major cities in Artsakh.
Very good. What do we know about the health and safety of those that have been displaced? And then we'll get to those that are currently still residing there. That'll be the next part, the next question.
The same, David. The same. Probably the reason for that we don't have any concrete numbers is that we were preparing ourselves for a long war, and we knew that this time Azeris and Turks will be going till the end. But at the same time, in parallel with the military activities, the Artsakh government has set up a coordination center in Yerevan, which has been functioning for weeks now, and they have a hotline that every Artsakhi can reach out and tell their concerns and request help, be it material help or medical help or whatever. But I also want to say that we're extremely grateful to our compatriots in Armenia who opened their doors and their doors and their hearts to tens of thousands of Artsakhi's who found not only the shelter but also the warmth. They were welcome, and all the many issues were taken care of on that level without even reaching the centralized effort by the Artsakh government. Of course, this is exactly what we expected because we are one family, and in dire situations we have to be especially close to each other. We are grateful for that, but in parallel with that, state also was doing certain efforts, and that center is still functioning. And everyone who has any problems can reach out and request any sort of assistance they have. But in general, healthcare and everything, and probably the COVID-19 is also something which is on the minds of many of our participants today. Yes, the situation is absolutely difficult in Armenia and in Artsakh, of course, as well, because there was no even idea or the understanding that we should be doing this on social distance, whatever you can imagine for more peaceful times. And we have also many cases of COVID infection among Artsakhi's, and everything is taken care of as as it is towards the citizens of the Republic of Armenia. No any difference. We feel that. We have been hearing very warm stories, and we're extremely grateful for everyone who made that possible. And I know that your assistance from the diaspora has also played a very big role in making sure that we have the proper medicine and staff. Also, many doctors joined Armenian medical forces. When I say Armenian, of course, I imply Artsakh too. And so as a cumulative, as a common effort, we hopefully that all the medical services are available to anyone in need.
Very good. Shifting, that's comforting to hear. Shifting back to, you started to touch on it. How many people do we know of that are actually Artsakh citizens that are still residing in Artsakh right now, that maybe they haven't left? You mentioned 1,000 have come back. And then what do we know about their health and safety and security currently?
The same. We know that the hospital in Artsakh, the main hospital in Stepanakert, the Republican hospital, has been targeted and it has been hit by, and also the maternity center has been hit by missile strikes from Azeris. But the work wasn't interrupted because preparation for war is always kind of already is by default in the mind of every structure or every action we take in Artsakh. There were safe conditions for our people who needed help, and it is working even now. Yes, it was damaged, the hospital, but it was not derailed completely. It was not distracted completely, and the medical services are not paralyzed. Again, I'm having trouble to mention any numbers, but the most important thing is that we are ready for the best case scenario when every Artsakhi is back. So our reactions are towards that end.
Very good. Thank you, Robert.
Well, so Robert, first of all, thanks for answering those questions. Obviously, we're trying to flag down, you know, the needs of the community and funnel them to you. So that dovetails into the next thing, which is some of the humanitarian relief and support. Now, I know that you mentioned that there's a coordination center in Yerevan, and that's fantastic. You also mentioned, though, that the medical facilities have been damaged, and there's been a lot of infrastructure damage. So the first of the few questions that we have are, you know, since some Armenians are being asked to return to Artsakh, and as you've said, many have already returned, what real support structures or infrastructure services are actually genuinely available to them? I mean, is it really viable for them to be living there?
In Artsakh?
Yes, in Artsakh.
Well, as I said, since the day one, the life in Artsakh was not paralyzed, and the administration was functioning as intended. There was a huge army of people who were providing communication, providing that electricity is always on, that the water is running, that nobody is sick. Even in the shelter, doctors are visiting every shelter. We're visiting every shelter in Stepanakert. I can say for Stepanakert, but I presume that the same was everywhere possible. They were entering and asking if somebody needed medical attention, if somebody had blood pressure or any psychological stresses they wanted to cope with. We haven't been paralyzed, and of course, everything is in a much better situation now. The government is undertaking urgent steps to return everything back on track as soon as possible. But as of now, even during the bombardment of Stepanakert, there were firefighters who were risking their lives to bring down the fires. There were communication specialists who also often sacrificed their lives, or at least put them at risk, to make sure that the internet is working and we can spread the word out. So we have thousands examples of absolutely selfless patriotism and courage by so many soldiers who are on the second front, who were kind of in the logistical support. And the same system is working well now. Every day we've been seeing that our our emergency services, they were taking out the unexploded missiles and neutralizing them elsewhere to make sure that they're away from a peaceful population. medical services, yes, we can say that in Martunian, in Martakert, and in Hadrut is occupied still by them, but in Martunian and Martakert, they've been destroyed. And the fire was indiscriminate everywhere, and in Stepanakert, but still we have the opportunity to, if somebody reaches Stepanakert for medical assistance, our doctors, they assure that they can provide all medical services, which doesn't mean that everything is perfect. I don't want you to have, or anyone to have an impression that everything is perfect, but if any tiny country as Artsakh is, with a tiny population as Artsakh has, God forbid, undergoes through the same volume and degree of challenges we have seen, we can say that the state is doing fine in providing whatever is possible and is needed in terms of protection of the civilian population in their basic rights.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. So I appreciate the update. So the other questions that that are being posed are, what humanitarian relief efforts are currently underway on the ground? Is there, rebuilding happening? Is there, I mean, obviously it's so fresh, we don't know everything, but if maybe you could give us a pulse check on what is flowing, and then we have one more question on that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Just like you said, our government has certain ideas which are yet to be implemented, but for now we can say that when I say that everything, we felt the difference. If we compare the situation with the aggression in 1991, I'm sure many of you have participated in the Pan-Armenian fundraiser through the Armenia Fund, and that was an enormous help. And many people, thousands of people, were doing their own kind of, they found their own conduits and were delivering the assistance with their own channels. But we still rely on the support by the Armenia Fund and many other funds which have been working in Artsakh and Armenia for decades, who know the situation, who have been there. And those efforts are continuing. We know that the help is coming. We know that we need more. I want you to understand that this is a very long-term fight, and I want to underscore that this is a fight. We have to resist the Azeri-Turkish plans to change our intention and for us to give up in our hearts and just leave. No, there is a fight, and we will try to make sure that we create conditions through humanitarian channels, through our own resources as a state, and through continued support, of course, of our diaspora. We have to create conditions that life in Artsakh was even better than it was before this aggression, and that is our vision for the future. But there is assistance. We know that the war is a very expensive thing. Right. It's very hard, the economy of Artsakh and the economy of Armenia, but again, we're not paralyzed. We will get back on track. We will get back on our plans of development, including economic. We just need to keep our efforts together and keep our hands together and to try to delegate as much resource as we have. And it's not only the money. Money is very important, but also our brain, our time, our enthusiasm, our connections, our ideas, etc., everything we have.
No, that's great. So, I mean, you already touched on elements of the last question that I have, but if we were to give the listeners some rapid fire executables, what would you say would be the best ways that the diaspora can support those humanitarian efforts? Obviously, we know this is not an official sort of doctrine. This is not being laid down in an official capacity, but you're obviously the biggest authority here. So we just wanted to, many of us just want to help, and we want to find the best, most efficient and effective ways of doing so. So if you could help us out on that, that'd be fantastic.
I will not be original or try to create any bicycle here. I would say that all the conduits which have been functioning and proved very effective throughout these decades, they should be again considered as the means and as the channels to channel your support. The Armenia Fund, for instance, many people consider that whatever we lost to Azerbaijani occupation, hopefully temporary, so far that all those investments by the Armenian Fund are lost. Yes, they're lost physically, but I want to assure you that, and also this implies the importance of our continued humanitarian efforts, that
Right.
if it weren't for the projects implemented by Pan-Armenian efforts, the number of casualties among civilian population would be significantly higher.
Right.
The number of soldiers who would have died and hadn't been able to make it to the hospital because the road would be much worse than it is, would be much higher. That shelters would be in a much worse situation. That the infrastructure of Artsakh would have been much more convenient for protecting your security. So this is a kind of another evidence that the humanitarian assistance in Artsakh and Armenia work. They helped us a lot during the defense against this aggression, and we need to continue doing that. And we know that on November 26th there will be another telethon by the Armenian Fund, which is a traditional thing. And I'm sure that I hope that again we will see very active participation by our compatriots. And you can also ask where it went and how it changed the life in Artsakh in post-war Artsakh.
Right. Well, so okay. So first of all, thanks again for answering those questions. What I'm hearing is, and you can just confirm or deny. What I'm hearing is this is not over. We need to keep focused. The diaspora has been an enormous help, and many of the diaspora, we want to continue helping. So we need to keep donating to the most appropriate channels, right? Sounds
exactly. That's a much shorter and much more concise version of what I said.
Well, I think it needs to come from you, and we're grateful for it. So I'm going to hand the next series of questions over to Greg, and he'll take it from there.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Robert, for answering everything so succinctly. As the community needs to understand what is happening and where to proceed, my questions will be concentrated on kind of the one of the items that was mentioned is obviously the ethnic cleansing. One particular method is the removal of any artifacts from the land, right? The physical and religious artifacts from the land. And I want to ask a few questions regarding this. Is there a vision or a plan for preserving the religious and cultural sites of Artsakh, not just currently in the currently held territories, but territories outside of the NKR, quote unquote. In one of the most kind of noteworthy pieces being Dadivank, and what is the status of that particular area? The reason for this is because we've all known what happened to all of the Armenian sites in the Nakhichevan region, okay? And we as Armenians of the diaspora want to understand, is there anything that can be done as a applied pressure to prevent this from happening to the sites in Artsakh currently?
Thank you. Very important aspect of the fight for our existence as Armenians and as our for the cultural heritage of the Armenian people. Exactly, you're exactly right when you said that the example of Nakhichevan shows the whole intention that that's what will happen if Azerbaijan takes control of the Armenian monuments, cultural monuments. Unfortunately, also we already have seen some nasty things they're doing to the church in Shushi, the beautiful church of Survazan Chitsots. Yes, the Dadivank, as of now, non-confirmed, nothing official yet, but apparently it will be under special guard by the peacekeepers, and it is safe as of now from attacks by Turks and Azeris, but we know what would be the fate of Dadivank. The same goes for well, the best way, of course, it would be to restore Artsakh's authority over Artsakh, which has thousands of cultural monuments, historical monuments. By the way, if it comes to non-Christian monuments, we also have demonstrated an absolutely different approach. We restored the mosque in Shushi. We have been very, very protective of every non-Christian, Muslim and other non-Christian heritage in Artsakh, but unfortunately we don't see. That's one of the things that we also don't see from Azerbaijan. What can we do in the respective governments. We have to, again, keep the pressure on our governments so they can address the relevant international institutions, the UNESCO and others who are dealing with the international, who are dealing with the protection of the cultural heritage. I know Azerbaijan is already responsible for that. I mean, there is responsibility for protecting the cultural heritage when they entered various international organizations, but the fact is different. So we need to make sure that you need to make sure that your elected representatives also raise this question. It is also another form of a genocide, a cultural genocide, and this is something that they've been doing as soon as they have control over any territory. They eliminate all the traces of the Armenian presence and name it a millennia-old Azerbaijan or whatever territories. Yes, we hope that it will be remaining on the agenda of the world leaders. We have been getting signals from world leaders that the preservation of cultural heritage is extremely important, but it is all up to the pressure. Just like you said, community pressure works, not only in cutting the ties of lobbyists with Azeri government, but also it should be as effective if it comes to the rest of the humanitarian aspects of the conflict.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on the reports, the specific reports of the Russian peacekeepers currently protecting such as Dadivank and others? And are there any real reasons to feel more secure in these actions? Can this be a reassurance of a slight?
Well, one of the peculiarities of the Artsakh-Azerbaijan conflict is that we absolutely don't trust them. And that is the worst thing you can imagine for any attempt for settlement process. Trust should be essential. But there have been too many cases when we have seen that we don't have the opportunity to trust our negotiator on the other side. We don't trust them if they say that Dadivank is safe. We have to make sure that we protect it. We have to make sure that to the maximum, the peacekeepers also protect it. It is probably safer than, well, not probably, for sure it's safer than without the peacekeepers, because as the recent, they show even in small participation, which is in numbers pretty much small participation of peacekeepers on the ground can change the situation drastically and bring stability back to the region. Yes, we are hopeful that Azerbaijanis realize what it would mean to attack a sacred place for Armenians, which is under protection by Armenians and peacekeepers.
Thank you. And to that respect, do you see it likely that organizations, international organizations such as UNESCO, Global Heritage Fund, and others can and will help, and into what capacity?
Tough to say, because in terms of, if we go back to Nakhichevan, they didn't help, unfortunately. It all comes to we understand that this is every issue is too much politicized and very often subject to political conjuncture. Unfortunately, that's very unfortunate, but that's a reality. We can expect it, we have to try it, but we have to try it with the machine gun in our hand and standing there and trying to protecting it, because as I said, so much of our cultural heritage is lost in Turkey and in Nakhichevan.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. With that, I would like to pass it on to David for the next section.
That's right. Thank you so much. We're shifting gears, Robert, to recognition of Artsakh. That's something we've talked about throughout the entire war. Recognize Artsakh, and even prior, much more prior, for many decades, we've talked about this. Where does recognizing Artsakh as an independent republic fit in the picture now, and how would international recognition affect the current situation?
Since the day one, be it back in 1991 or the day one of this current aggression, we have raised this question that the issue of the recognition of independence of Artsakh has become much more important and urgent than before the aggression. Well, I mean, the importance was there, but the urgency was absolutely pushing forward. We believe that the international recognition of Artsakh continues to be extremely important for us. It will give us this set of political tools to be able to protect our freedom and our choice and our rights, not only on the battlefield, we've seen it too many times, but we also deserve to be able to protect our rights and liberties and our people on the political arena. We are a much more stable state than so many states around the globe. The historical and legal preconditions and moral after so many aggressions against us, preconditions for Artsakh statehood are absolutely firm. And we want it to be done yesterday. It would have cooled down the situation. It should have been done very long ago. That's what I meant. It would have cooled down the situation. It wouldn't have led to the human tragedy as it is now. And it would help to prevent recurrence of attacks on us in the future, because if you're a recognized state by many countries, it takes your security and your relations with the international community and vice versa on the next level. And the consequences of aggression against the recognized Republic of Artsakh for Azerbaijan would have been much more different than now. So please, if we have any opportunities, we need to keep pushing forward. I don't want anyone to be discouraged by the demarcation, by the current territory under control of the Republic of Artsakh, because recognition doesn't imply any territories or boundaries or square mileage. No, it's a political act between two governments, and the government is functioning in Artsakh and with clear vision of how to move forward. It does remain a very important priority for the Republic of Artsakh.
Very good. That you actually really segued very well to the next question. What can we do as the diaspora, or what can the diaspora do to help ensure Artsakh is recognized by the US and other nations?
We have to tell the story about Artsakh. We have to continue working with our elected representatives on the state level. And I'm glad that we are talking mostly, as far as I understand, with the Californians, because California is one of the states which has recognized Artsakh. And California and Artsakh have multifaceted relations. And we're very proud of that. Shusha and Los Angeles are actually friendship cities. And it is indeed our hope that we will be able to return to that format of cooperation between those two cities when Shusha is back Armenian. We need to educate about Artsakh. We need to know, well, probably we should know about Artsakh, all the aspects of it, right? History doesn't matter. If history doesn't matter, legal aspects do matter, etc., etc. We need to know about Artsakh. We need to keep our eye and focus on Artsakh. We need to educate about Artsakh as much as we can, and we need to try to persuade our elected representatives in our states, in the relevant states around the United States and elsewhere around the globe, if you have foreign watchers, to recognize that Artsakh deserves to live as a free and independent sovereignty. It's nothing extraordinary. We don't ask for anything which is not dear to the democratic world. We have proved for so many decades what we want the sovereignty for. We haven't turned into one of those uncontrolled gray areas, and there are so many examples around the world of recognized state becoming that. We haven't become a dynasty-type autocracy like Azerbaijan or any countries which are recognized, unlike Artsakh. We need to make sure that sovereignty and Artsakh don't sound strange if you hear those two words. Artsakh should be recognized for what it is. It should be recognized for its desire to live as a democratic sovereignty. What we can do, what you can do, many of you already have done a lot, and we need to stay united. We need to stick around the organizations which are doing political lobbying or political grassroots activity. We need to reach out to diplomatic representations, to political organizations of Artsakh around the globe, and try to cooperate. We are asking our competitors for guidance in so many questions. Those are the issues Artsakhi politicians have slightly more experience in. We can also guide each other how to navigate through the political system in a respective country. But I always like to repeat the words by Nelson Mandela, who said that it all seems impossible until it's done. It will be done, and Artsakh is one of the things we have that we are always optimistic. We can do it. 8 states around the United States have already adopted similar resolutions, which have significantly strengthened Artsakh economically, politically, and in terms of democracy. And we see that it has its positive effect.
Very good. Thank you, Robert. We're going to shift to one more area of what it looks like moving forward from here. We have a number of really great questions that are coming through. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Rich, why don't you take it away with the last section here?
Excellent. Okay, thanks, David. So once again, Robert, thank you again for answering these questions. The first question is sort of a statement that dovetails into a question. And this is really sort of your personal, this is less policy and more personal oriented, right? So the statement is that, the United States of America, we pride ourselves on having this legacy of benevolence. And that really began with organizations such as the Near East Relief, or which became the Near East Foundation. And that organization addressed the catastrophic humanitarian crisis and the consequences of the Armenian genocide. And they did it by providing humanitarian aid. And they were really able to insert themselves into the American lexicon. And we saw that manifest with quotations like the starving Armenians. And that became sort of a rallying cry for many American citizens on how we can begin helping other countries. And the irony of this, starting all over again and continuing in many ways, is not lost on many of us especially who were born in the United States and who grew up Armenian Americans. So the question is, knowing that this initial situation helped connect Americans to a lifetime of service, and through our plight, knowing that there's this media landscape in place today, and without dissecting that media landscape too much, the question is, what do you think that we can do as a diaspora to make a similar connection to the American public today? And the reason we ask that is because many of us have been blasting for a month and a half or so and getting very little traction. And whether it is reaching out directly to our American compatriots or just blasting in general, we just haven't been able to peek out into the mainstream. So if you have any suggestions as to what we might be able to do to get into the mainstream consciousness again, then it seems like now's the time for us to do that.
That's a very tough question. But if you want me to respond personally, and as you said in the beginning, this is an unofficial meeting, I always was for centralized efforts. And the experience shows that if we have 20 attempts to do something, those 20 conditional utils can be united into one and bring to a greater result. I understand that it's very natural that every person has various schedules, there's different specialty, different worldview, different level of engagement, different level of knowledge, or different desire, or different level of different geography even in the United States. If we in the 21st century can use all the benefits and blessings of this communication that we can unite with hundreds of our watchers now, we can use that, and we should be using that to stick together and to direct our efforts into the conduits, into the organizations or channels or organizations or institutions which are strong in that particular field. One of the good things of the Armenian diaspora in the United States that we are very strongly represented in practically every field of this country and the society. We already have them. We should be not refraining or isolating ourselves from reaching out and just asking for guidance. every aspect of the life in the United States can be reached through Armenian structures, be it humanitarian, or be it political, or be it medical, or be it IT, whatever you want, educational, etc., etc. I just suggest that we centralize our efforts, then we stay in touch. It's very easy electronically to do it now, that we continue to ask questions, Google for the answers that we want to find, and then again, staying in touch is key, and centralized efforts is the key. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. That's fantastic. So now we've got a couple more questions. This one is about the agreement, and obviously, you know, we all know what you can, that there may be a level of things that you can't answer. But you know, can you offer some clarity and thoughts regarding the 5-year timeline? You know, the agreement does state that there's a 5-year timeline with some sort of an option at the 4.5-year mark. And many of us are a little confused about that, and as to if so-and-so does something, then so-and-so can do something else. Maybe you can offer a little bit of clarity about what that looks like, and about what do we know about the sustainability of that agreement in that 4.5+ years. And then the final part of that is, you know, if you can touch on whether or not that's likely to be extended or not.
I don't know. That is the simple answer. I really don't know, and I cannot guess. It's too serious to be guessing in this issue. We know that the only predictable thing about Azerbaijan is that it is absolutely unpredictable. And now we have Turkey, which is kind of hands-on, and now we have terrorists who are not going anywhere. So the situation is very different now. A 5-year time frame and all the bad stuff we find in that, this is not actually an agreement, this is a statement. This is just like the 3 previous statements. This is a statement number 4. Agreement is a much heavier diplomatic document, and it implies a different level of responsibility for non-compliance. But for this statement, there are so many questions in that statement. When the statement implies that the refugees and internally displaced persons have to go back, does it imply Hadrutsis to go back, or Shushi Armenians to go back? What about them? Does it imply people like Misha Oganisyan or Greg or others who left from Baku? Does it imply them to be able to go back? Because they're also, right? And tens of thousands in the United States and hundreds of thousands around the globe. So this statement, for me, from the first glance, it contains many questions that should be clarified, and we can sure say that it has been heavily influenced by Azerbaijan's attempts to make it as nasty as possible. Yeah. And this 5-year term, many people expect it to be another flare-up in 5 years, but we are hopeful that with the presence of peacekeepers, we will be able to proceed in a manner, including in a diplomatic manner, that these 5 years are not lost, that these 5 years are used to strengthen us, to strengthen our relations, to get to somewhere very logical in terms of international recognition of Artsakh, and to make sure that in 5 years, we already are a component that can very strongly affect the regional situation. Again, be it 5 years or 10 years, we don't have to delegate or outsource our main issues to peacekeepers of any country or anyone. We have to be focused on the vision that it is up to us. Nobody will be as protective of our freedom as Armenians. Nobody will be as caring about Artsakh as Artsakhs.
That's right. So, yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is that the more involved we are and the more focused we are and the more participating in the process we are, you know, the more opportunity we have for affecting some sort of change, because we can't really change some of the issues on the ground. But in your opinion, what would be some of the most effective steps that we as a diaspora can take to really affect change on the ground there? You know, that would be probably the biggest one, whether it's short term, long term. You know, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, to keep it easy and short, this crisis has 2 main components: political and humanitarian. Actually 3 components, and economic. So the first 2 are intertwined. The humanitarian and economic, they're intertwined. we need to keep the recognition of Artsakh as our priority as a community here in the States and elsewhere in the world. And we have to stay together to help Armenia and Artsakh to recover from this damage that we have seen from the war, and to create Artsakh, which will be attractive for Artsakhis at least, and for many others who would still wish in the current reality to move to Artsakh, for them to do so. So yes, we have lots of challenges. Our agenda is never empty. Our plate is never empty. We have so many things to do, but we are at least glad to have this subject of doing something. We're at least glad that for the 30 years we have strengthened to the extent that we could resist 7 armies pretty much, directly or indirectly involved, for 43 days, and still preserve our state, still preserve half of it. But still, we have Artsakh, we have Republic of Artsakh. All we need is to make it flourish again.
Well, that's those are some fantastic words, and I can't speak for the entire diaspora, but I believe I could speak for many of us in saying that we're behind you, we're behind the nation, and many of us are pulling in the same direction. And as evidenced by the hundreds of people who are on this right now, we're all pulling in the direction of freedom for everyone. So with that said, that concludes, I think, the sort of curated questions that we have. And we've been able to curate some questions from the Q&A section of listeners and viewers right now. So I'm going to hand that over to Greg, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you, Richard. Robert, thank you for your time. I appreciate that. I know we're past the hour mark, and thank you for everyone that's continuing to listen and staying focused on the issue currently. We're going to move on to the Q&A portion, and some questions that are similar, so we kind of combine them into themes. You have touched upon the heroism of our soldiers, of our army. My question, the question from the audience, is a combination from a participant from Oakland and Los Angeles. What is the current situation with our prisoners of war? Are they safely returning home? And how about the exchange of the bodies, and what is currently the status of that? And the combination to that question is, what is the status with some of the missing in action, Kamavors in particular, in Kelbajar area? And is there any organizations dealing with that? Are there any contacts for those that are curious about how to inquire about possibly some people missing?
Yes, thank you. That's a very important question, because it is of the highest humanitarian priority for us to make sure that our folks are returning home as soon as possible and as sound as possible. The POWs, yes, there is a process through the ICRC mostly. Prisoners of war, there is an exchange, and it should be, I think, geographically implemented in Georgia, as far as I know, because that's the closest country, the most convenient geography to do that. The process is on. For the killed in action, yes, the bodies are being collected from our side and from Azerbaijani side, and there is a transfer, again, with the facilitation of the peacekeepers, but it is done through mainly the ICRC, International Committee of the Red Cross, and Artsakh's State Emergency Services. It is on the agenda. The process has started, and we hope that it will bring to as much good news as possible in terms of the exchange of prisoners of war, of course. Unfortunately, even after the ceasefire, 10 Armenians were captured by Azerbaijani. So there's another process which is happening now, and people were doing their humanitarian job and they were captured by subversive groups. That's another challenge. Yes, those guys don't want to stop from attacking Armenians. But it is definitely on the agenda, and there are relevant structures. Actually, there is a committee which is dealing under the Artsakh government, which is regulating the issues of prisoners of war and missing soldiers. And that commission is also fully involved into this process.
Thank you.
I haven't heard about any results, unfortunately, in terms of the exchange of prisoners of war, but hopefully we're going to hear soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Mikhail, you had some questions that you were able to from the
trying to we did receive a lot of questions. Some of them have been answered, perhaps not in full, but at least partially. So a lot of the questions, probably a good 40% of the questions, have to do with some specific ideas that people have on the viability of Artsakh logistically and geographically. People are basically asking, given that a much smaller portion of the territory remains connected to Armenia only by one corridor, Lachin, which runs near Shushi, obviously, which is an important strategic point for the Azeris. They want Robert to comment on what he thinks of the viability of Artsakh's economy, and in terms of that connection, in terms of the remaining availability of viable agricultural lands, since some of the lands have been occupied, and whether, as far as he understands, if there are still industries that would be available for people to return to and have jobs. So a good chunk of the questions relates to this.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, that's a kind of the general set of questions of how we get back to normal so people return to Artsakh. In terms of connection and arable lands and everything, I want to remind that we've been in a situation worse than this during the first aggression. But again, we have been able to find the forces to restore our lives in a better manner. We have all the preconditions for safe movement, for economic activity, for everything. If everything goes as planned, if Azerbaijanis really comply with the statement, with the provisions of the statement, and if war doesn't erupt again, our government has a plan on how to put everything back on track as soon as possible. Yes, the intention is to continue in the new reality, definitely, but to continue the fight, because that is also part of the fight. That's why I'm saying the fight.
So with this question, it dovetails into the question around peacekeepers. So a few questions around peacekeepers. So some folks wanted to understand if the Russian commitment is still going to be strong enough, and you addressed the term of 5 years, but as far as the strength of the commitment in terms of the supporting the population in Artsakh, in terms of the security and humanitarian needs. And another question on the peacekeeping side of it, or a few of them related to the Turkish intent, stated intent to still try to squeeze their so-called peacekeepers, actual troops on the ground, into Artsakh, and whether, based on what we're seeing now, whether Russia would be able to resist that.
Peacekeepers are there to protect peace, and both peoples suffered from this war. So I think Azeris also should be interested in peacekeeping operations in Artsakh and the peacekeepers along the line of contact. In terms of, we cannot predict, of course, how it will go, what will happen. The situation is too volatile. And for instance, if Turkey resumes aggression, how it is possible that 2,000 of peacekeepers will be able to resist what previously has been done by tens of thousands of Artsakhi's. I mean, the Armenians as Armenians in general. It's tough. It's tough to say. It's tough to predict. But if the intention is as it is as of today, and the behavior is similar to what was going on today, yes, it will be pretty much safe and predictable. Regarding the Turkish troops, yes, Turkey has appeared militarily in the region. I mean, actual boots on the ground in a larger sense, for the first time in more than 2 centuries. Turkey wants to be in Azerbaijan. Turkey is in Azerbaijan, and that's forever. And that's a new component we have to deal with from now on. They wanted to have a kind of joint teams of peacekeepers, but of course, Turkey cannot be considered and was never considered by us as an unbiased member of the OSCE Minsk group, because Turkey is in the Minsk group, and it is one of the 10 countries which are kind of called to negotiate this. There are 3 co-chairs, Russia, United States, and France, but there is a bigger Minsk group. But all we've seen from Turkey was instigation of war. It happened in 2016. It happened when they were training Azerbaijani troops. It happened when they sent their generals. And we have seen only a destructive and dangerous participation of Turkey. They wanted to have their boots on the ground, their soldiers implementing the peacekeeping forces, but we have seen media reports from the peacekeepers from the Russian, I think, foreign ministry has also said that it's not going to happen, and there will be a joint center in the territory of Azerbaijan, not adjacent to Artsakh, and there will be joint Russian-Turkish presence, which will be coordinating other regional issues. And I don't think that it will be having anything to do with the Karabakh peacekeeping, but if it is, at least we don't have legitimized Turkish soldiers as peacekeepers in Artsakh, because they will never bring peace. They will just bring destruction and further sufferings to Armenians.
Related to this, a couple of other questions is around troops, and we have just a little bit of time left, so we'll try to go as quickly as possible. So, and based on information available to me personally, our police force, the Artsakh police force, is staying put, and we have a large police force presence in Artsakh. But so folks are also they're asking about our troops, the Armenian troops, Artsakh army, the Artsakh army, are they being withdrawn?
As of now, as far as I know, all the army is in the same positions and continue to do their military job as of now. But again, there is a set of provisions which have to be implemented, but we don't know how the security situation will unfold, because everything will depend on that, how Azerbaijan will comply with the rest of the items. And as I said, they say that refugees and internally displaced persons have to go back. Okay, if they allow Hadrutsis to go back to their homes, that will be in respect of the statement. I wouldn't be willing to see that Azerbaijan is implementing only part of or wants to see only part of the statement implemented. But as of now, the defense army is still in the positions.
Kind of a slightly different sort of a series of questions. I'll try to consolidate them as much as possible. So one of them has to do with the Armenian organizations here in the US. So people want to know whether, let's say, the Armenian fund, the Armenia Fund, if it's fully engaged and is helping refugees and the rest of the programs related to the humanitarian needs. And a lot of people are basically asking, so what organizations do we work through? Whom do we donate to in order to support initiatives?
Well, it depends on what the initiative. If the main concern is the refugees, yes, the Armenia Fund has been involved in that, is involved in that, and they have also posted an infographics of where did the money go, and of course not the entire amount has been spent so far. There is still available funds, because as I said, we've been getting ready for a much longer defense. Armenia Fund is an organization which has representatives, affiliates in 23, I think, countries, and its board contains people, very respected people from all those 23 countries, and most of them are very known. So it is an organization under very strict control, and they've been very effectively helping throughout these times, and we hope that they will continue doing so. But that's, again, I don't work with the Armenian Fund to be able to answer organizationally all the questions organizational, but I'm sure that, I think I heard the media report that they will be posting a report on all those funds raised very soon. It is just the post-war situation and all these new developments that are kind of postponing it, but it doesn't mean that anything is going in not in the direction it is supposed to go. Other organizations, yes, there are plenty of education organizations, medical organizations, and all of them are extremely important now. But we have been working with it. Armenia Fund works with the Artsakh government, and many of you probably know hundreds and hundreds of projects. And every time you come to Artsakh, you see many of them which have significantly not only improved the life, but also raised the level of security of Artsakh.
Probably the last question of the evening before we wrap up. So a lot of folks are worried about the situation in Armenia and how the uncertainty of that situation, political and otherwise, would affect the security and stability in Artsakh. And so if you could comment on that.
I cannot comment honestly. We just hope that it will go back to the situation in Armenia, will go back to normal as soon as possible, because the last thing we want is further destabilization in Armenia. That's exactly what our enemies want, but we want all the issues to be solved as quickly as possible, because we need to preserve the unity, and we need to challenge this. No, we have to face these challenges as one fist, as one strong army of the Armenian people.
And that's actually a perfect segue into a couple of closing remarks from me, which hopefully would answer a lot of the questions that have been posed. So we, as the diaspora, I mean, we want to be engaged. We want to help in various ways. So it's not absolutely 100% clear right now what the specific efforts, the specific projects, the specific initiatives will be. All of that is going to come and will be developed. So with that said, if there are listeners right here, right now, who want to apply themselves, Greg, I believe, will share the Arach Media's email address. We encourage you to email us and provide us with your personal information, like the name, contact information, and the types of things or areas you're interested in. And we will try to match whatever you have to offer with what will become a slew of various efforts and initiatives in not so distant future. So with that said, I believe, Greg, you wanted to make a
yes. Thank you, Mikhail. Yes, we will be sending a follow-up email. That will be the format through which people can engage, and in the follow-up email, we will list the contacts of how to best pursue next action, next steps. You are correct. We need to continue moving forward, because we as a nation need to come together and understand what is happening to us, what has been brought to us, and how we can best respond. That being said, I want to kind of slowly start the closing of the session. Robert, I want to thank you for joining us. You are Artsakh first and foremost. You are a friend and you are a representative of that region. I can't imagine what you personally are going through, and I thank you for giving us the opportunity to share that with everyone. We are committed, and we will continue to translate the necessary information, call to actions, so that the diaspora better understands what are the succinct items that need to be achieved to improve the current situation.
Thank you so much. We rely on your support.
Thank you. Richard, I believe you had a closing as well.
Well, yeah, for sure. So again, first, I absolutely wanted to thank you, Robert, for taking the time. I'm going to echo what Greg said. I can't imagine what you've been going through over the past week or so, let alone the past month and a half, and prior to. And I know that we have a long road ahead of us. So I just wanted to express my deepest gratitude and just confirm to you our unwavering commitment. Many of us have felt very detached and not able to participate on the ground the way that we've wanted to, but we've been mobilizing in extraordinary ways to do everything that we can to support the cause. And I cannot imagine that stopping anytime soon. So to all those people who are watching right now, I just want to recap a little bit about what we've experienced in the past hour and a half, and then talk about what we can do moving forward. So we had a fantastic message from the honorable representative, who we talked about the status of Artsakh and the status of all the displaced residents. We talked about the humanitarian relief and the support that is already happening and flowing, and how we need more of it. We talked a little bit about the preservation and protection of the cultural and religious sites. And also focusing on the recognition of Artsakh as an independent republic and how important that is. And so what we can do moving forward is to, continue to participate and help. If there aren't community events happening in your area, start some. We need to work together as a team. We don't have the luxury of working against each other. Connect with your church. Because they're going to be an important hub, not only spiritually, but also personally in connecting with other Armenians. Participate in political advocacy. We all know that there are a couple of amazing groups who are doing tremendous work constantly and tirelessly on our behalves. So we're going to get you the links to those appropriate places. So continue to participate there. Engage in social media, all platforms and in every way, because we need to keep blasting and we need to find ways around the algorithms to get up past the clouds and get this into the national consciousness. We also need to make personal phone calls to each one of our friends and the people who are our allies, because right now more than ever, we're going to need those allies. So if you have favors to call in, now's the time to do it. And then keep up with Arach Media. And again, Greg and David and I are going to be working tirelessly to provide you as much content and as much curated, funneled, clean content as possible. And again, just to echo what they've said, we will be sending out a follow-up email with links and much
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to bring it to a close here. Thank you, Robert and Mikhail, for helping make this event possible. And really to everybody that's here tonight joining us, sacrificing your evening for well over an hour and a half now. Thank you for listening and participating with all the wonderful questions as well, the really great, thoughtful questions. You guys, our email address, arachmedia@gmail.com. We will send a follow-up email, but feel free to send that email to us, as Mikhail was touching on, with some of the areas that you'd like to focus on and things you'd like to help with. So it's arachmedia@gmail.com. We invite you, as Rich just mentioned, follow our Arach Media page on Facebook. Join us on Arach Media Live Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights, 9 p.m. Pacific time. And again, as Rich was touching on, take action, plug into those Armenian advocacy resources that are out there. The Armenian National Committee of America, the Armenian Assembly of America. We'll share those links as well. Continue to donate. Armenia Fund, Armenian Relief Society, AGBU, Peros Foundation, and many others that are out there helping humanitarian relief efforts in Artsakh and Armenia. Finally, continue to share information, stay active on social media with your networks. Make sure accurate, relevant information is being shared online. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We hope you have a wonderful evening. And we have to keep pushing and stand with our brothers and sisters in Artsakh and Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.